The signal. The void was quiet in that part of the galaxy, a dark corner tucked behind collapsed wormholes and long-abandoned trade routes. Star charts marked it only as Vero's Scar, a cosmic dead zone, far from any recognized empire. There were no colonies here, no wars, only silence. And then, the signal. It was old, weak, faint enough to pass for cosmic background noise. But on the Carolean vessel Zhenjai, orbiting the lush world of Halamire, it pinged just loud enough to be noticed. Origin point? Asked Counselor Liarin, her crystalline limbs twitching in curiosity. Navigator Vile, with 3 data tethers wrapped around his sensory ridges, peered deeper into the transmission. Unknown. Human design, primitive, but military-coded. They hesitated. The Caroleans had observed humans from afar, strange creatures of war and fire, unpredictable, resilient, dangerous. But they had also been fascinating. Lock coordinates. Prepare retrieval craft, Liarin said. Counselor, Vile warned. The signal is embedded in a Class 7 debris field. Radiation pockets. High kinetic instability. Liarin's voice was firm. Then wear the armor. If there's a soul alive in there, they called for help. We answer. The wreck was ancient by human standards. 2 decades, maybe 3. Scarred by plasma, shredded by impact. Around it spun frozen corpses, their suits punctured and faces erased by decompression. A Terran Black Ops ship, designation Oblivion Drift, now reduced to drifting ash, but one life form remained. The escape pod was entombed in a crescent of bent hull plating. Biosigns were almost flat, oxygen reserve at 2%, heart rate barely there. He was human. Inside, his body was twisted in pain, a shoulder dislocated, and thigh speared by a jagged shard of his own seat, facial lacerations, burn scars, and something worse, something in his mind. The Caroleans took him anyway, back to Halamire, back to light. They called him Arlen Drax. Even unconscious, his presence disturbed the Caroleans. Not for his appearance, though the exposed teeth and scars were startling, but because of the silence in his mind. The Caroleans were empaths, innately connected through low-frequency harmonic resonance. They felt each other, thoughts like ripples on water. But from Drax, there was only static. Counselor Liarin observed him daily. He dreams of fire, she whispered. On the 4th night he awoke. His breathing was shallow, pupils dilated. He reached for a weapon that wasn't there. When he saw Liarin, his voice cracked like broken glass. "Where am I?" "Safe," she said gently. "Your vessel was lost. We brought you to Halamire." He scanned the room, soft walls that glowed faintly with breath. No screens, no edges, no exits. "You're not human," he muttered. "No," she replied. "But we chose to help you. You sent a signal." Drax's eyes sharpened. "What signal?" "In Earth orbit, above the Terran fortress Moon Typhon." Admiral Sorel stood before a shimmering holomap. The beacon's trace had been recovered, decrypted, and analyzed. Escape pod confirms ID. Captain Arlen Drax, Special Tactics Division. Blacklisted after Operation Red Dagger. Presumed dead. He was in Vero's Scar, asked Commander Thane. What the hell was he doing out there? Sorel's jaw tightened. "We don't ask, we recover." He turned to the deck. "Mobilize Second Fleet. I want strike vessels, med cruisers, and an orbit dominance array online. No contact protocol. Assume hostage scenario." Back on Halamire, Drax tried to walk. He limped across a crystalline garden where Carolean children hummed melodies to floating seeds. Liarin followed, keeping her distance. "I don't understand why you helped me," he said. "You had no obligation." "We answer when called," she said. "Even if it kills you." She tilted her head. Even then, in orbit, Earth's fleet tore into the atmosphere like a sword through silk. They came without warning. No lights, no calls, just sonic booms and interference blasts that ripped through the Carolean sky. Electromagnetic disablers shorted out entire power clusters. Defensive satellites fried on entry. Humanity was here. Drax heard the tremors in the soil. His instincts snapped awake. He shoved aside a caretaker and ran, barefoot, bleeding, limping toward the highest ridge. From there, he saw them. Dark, triangular ships blotting out the sun. Drop pods descending like arrows. And above them all, the flagship Aurelius, proud and brutal. Counselor Lytran met him at the ridge. "Are they yours?" "They think I'm a hostage," Drax said coldly. "They think you're a threat." "We are not," she said. "They won't care." He grabbed her arm. "Tell your people to hide. Now." "We do not run," she replied softly. Drax turned to her, anguish painted on his battered face. "Then you don't understand what's coming." On the Aurelius, Admiral Sorel observed Carolean structures through magnified scans. No defensive cannons, no shielding arrays, not even orbital sensors, he muttered. "They're wide open," Thane added. "Suspiciously open," Sorel said. "Deploy recon teams Alpha through Echo. Stun protocols only. I want Captain Drax secured. All other contacts neutralize if threatened." 3 hours later, a human drone approached a Carolean outpost. The children stood outside, watching it with curiosity. One stepped forward, hummed a note. The drone misinterpreted the gesture as kinetic buildup. It fired a sonic blast, non-lethal, but loud, crippling. designed to drop insurgents in war zones. Here it caused a songquake. The Carolean children collapsed. One began seizing. The drone hovered, awaiting further instruction. Drax arrived 30 seconds later. He shot it out of the sky with a stolen sidearm. Back aboard the Aurelius, an alert chimed. Unauthorized discharge detected. Firepoint origin. Human model CTD-07. Sorel stared. He's armed. Thane nodded grimly. And fighting. On Hallmire's plains, Liren stood with Drax over the unconscious child. She trembled. Why did they do this? He clenched his fists. Because they don't trust. Because they think I'm worth more than you. But you are not more, she said, confused. You are one. Drax stared at the sky. They saved me, he whispered to himself. But he knew what Earth would think. He wasn't saved. He was taken. And Earth had come to take him back. The doctrine of fire. The Aurelius hung like a judgment star over Hallmire's violet sky. Its hull bore the scars of a dozen planetary sieges, burns etched by plasma, carbon scoring from rail slugs, and a gleaming new paint mark, the emblem of Earth's Terran alliance. A clenched gauntlet, wrapped in chains. Their motto, peace through power. Admiral Sorel paced the command deck, watching data streams coil through the air. Drones had mapped the entire Carolean hemisphere in under 4 hours. No military installations, no troop movements, no tactical infrastructure, just cities made of song and light. It didn't sit right. These people don't make sense, he muttered. A warp-capable civilization with no defense grid. Commander Thane spoke without looking up. Could be camouflage, tech hidden in the flora, cloaked signal barriers. Hell, they might even be pacifists. Sorel snorted. There's no such thing in deep space. Still no comms from Drax? None. Either he's incapacitated, or compromised. Sorel turned to the room. New directive. Secure Drax at all costs. Extract him to the Aurelius. Caroleans are to be contained and interrogated if possible. Subdue. Do not annihilate. He paused. Yet, on Hallmire, beneath a glimmering canopy of floating reeds, Drax prepared for war. His left leg was braced with a strip of reformed Carolean crystal, dull purple and humming faintly. A makeshift sidearm, a scavenged Terran arc pistol, was strapped to his hip. He had 2 power cells, 1 semi-functional medkit, and a stolen data chip plugged into a drone's cracked AI core. Not much, but enough. He stood before Liren, and a gathering of Carolean elders, tall beings with glowing neck fins, and expressions of serene concern. They're coming for me, he said. They'll enter your cities. They'll question you. And if you don't respond the way they expect, they'll assume you're hiding something. We are not, Liren said calmly. We only helped you. I know, Drax replied. But to Earth, that's suspicious. People like me don't just vanish. You picked up the wrong body. One of the elders, a golden-eyed being named Virik, tilted his head. What are you to them? Drax looked away. A ghost. A war they buried but never forgot. He turned to Liren. I need you to hide me. Not for me, for you. She frowned. If we hide you, does that not confirm their suspicion? Yes, Drax said. But it might buy you time. The first Terran drop pod touched down on the edge of a Carolean garden. Scout Team Echo emerged in full blackout armor. Their faces were concealed beneath breathing masks and neural visors, their rifles locked in standby. The Caroleans approached with no fear, only curiosity. One offered a silken flower. The gesture was misread. The humans responded with a flashbang and restraining foam. 3 Caroleans went down, screaming. Their minds, unaccustomed to trauma, erupted in sonic discord, a ripple of disharmony that stunned local fauna for miles. Back on the Aurelius, Sorel watched the footage and grimaced. They're mentally fragile. Telepathic resonance. Thane nodded. Empaths of some kind. Interrogation might be complicated. Sorel's eyes narrowed. Then Drax really is the priority. He keyed into the deckcom. Deploy Protocol Raven. Thane flinched. Sir, that's not. He's one of ours. Sorel's voice was ice. He's one of ours if he returns. If not, we can't afford the risk. I want him back, alive or sedated. Protocol Raven was a capture maneuver reserved for rogue operatives. It employed hunter-killer drones, neural override bursts, and one crucial tool, empath disruptors, designed during Earth's war with the Nahari Collective. They'd never been used on a species as peaceful as the Caroleans. Drax watched the sky darken as 6 drones broke cloud cover, each pulsed with blue arcs of compressed electricity, stun burst strong enough to drop a Terran mammoth. He activated the Carolean cloak, an experimental refractor net gifted by Liren's people. It shimmered around his body like a haze, imperfect but enough to confuse automated targeting. The first drone missed, the second did not. A pulse slammed into his ribs, flipping him into a shallow stream. He rolled, coughing, heart hammering, and fired 3 shots upward. 1 drone exploded, 2 more scattered. He ran, but not alone. Liren appeared beside him, her form rippling with defensive resonance. You said we had no weapons, he gasped. She raised a hand. We have no weapons, but we have adapted. Elsewhere on Hallmire, the Caroleans began to sing. It wasn't music. Not in the traditional sense. It was a form of coordinated resonance, subsonic, directional, layered in ways Terran instruments couldn't perceive. The effect was devastating. Scout Team Delta, advancing toward a temple structure, began experiencing vertigo, nosebleeds, sudden visual distortions. Their suits malfunctioned. Within seconds, 2 were unconscious. The rest retreated. On board the Aurelius, technicians scrambled to make sense of the data. Sir, their cities are singing. It's jamming our systems, but not mechanically, neurologically. Sorel gritted his teeth. What does that mean? They're hitting brainwaves directly, sir, causing false visual feeds, emotional spikes. This isn't defense. It's psychological warfare. Thane muttered. You were right. They're not as soft as they looked.
Sorel's face was unreadable. I want Drax now. No more gentle extraction. Send the neural reapers. Beneath a waterfall, Drax collapsed beside Liren. His hands trembled. His body burned. I didn't want this, he gasped. They weren't supposed to come. Liren touched his forehead, sending a cooling pulse of empathic resonance through his nerves. You carry guilt, she said gently. But not all of this is yours. He looked at her, eyes wet. You don't understand. I wasn't just a soldier. I was the one they sent in first when diplomacy failed. The one who got his hands dirty so others could play clean. Earth doesn't leave people like me lying around. If I disappear, they assume someone's playing a bigger game. And are we? She asked softly. He shook his head. You saved a human. Then we have no regrets. In the distance, a scream tore through the air. It wasn't Carulier. It was Terran.
One of the Neural Reaper teams had stumbled too deep into the harmonic zone. Their minds weren't built to resist pure emotion projected at full resonance. They screamed, because they saw their worst memories come alive. Sorel's hands trembled as he listened to the after-action reports. 2 squads down, 3 more unstable. They're feeling things, Admiral. Memories, grief, rage, and Drax, still evading. Sorel turned to Thane. Tell me something, Commander. Why does a world without weapons have a system that can break trained soldiers? Thane stared at the glowing map. Because they learned fast. On Halomire, Drax limped toward a shimmering Caerluian structure pulsing with energy. It was a thought factory, once a meditation chamber, now reconfigured to broadcast harmonics across the globe. You're weaponizing peace, he said. Liren stood beside him. No, we are protecting it. He laughed bitterly. That's the doctrine. That's what Earth believes too. Protect peace by any means. She looked at him. Then perhaps we are not so different. He turned to her. Then you'll understand what happens next. What does happen? He stared at the horizon. They'll stop talking, and they'll start bombing. On the Aurelius, Sorel prepared the orbital strike. He keyed in the coordinates for what his AI deemed a non-lethal high-impact deterrent strike. Focused plasma blasts, designed to scorch the land without targeting major population centers. The goal was psychological dominance, to remind the Caerluians, we are fire, and we are coming. Drax saw the sky ignite. He didn't scream. He didn't run. He just looked at Liren. I warned you. She stared at the falling stars. Yes, and we listened. The Caerluian elders activated a final frequency. One long buried, one never meant to be used again. And across Halomire, the world began to shift. Structures reconfigured. Plants unfurled hidden appendages. Crystals darkened, and began to hum with a new frequency. One tuned not to peace, but to survival. The humans had come expecting silence. But now, the world was answering. And it was singing a war song. When soft worlds burn, they said Halomire couldn't wage war. And for centuries, that was true. The Caerluians had long abandoned aggression, first in theory, then in biology. Their neural chemistry was restructured through generations of harmonic pacification. Anger had become an echo, war a distant myth. The concept of conflict was a ghost in their libraries, not their lives. Until now, until fire rained from the Terran sky, until peace was scorched by non-lethal deterrents, until one human told them, hide or burn. Now, they chose neither. Now Halomire remembered. Drax stood ankle-deep in blackened soil, the edges of his synthetic brace glowing with residual plasma heat. The blast radius was wide, 4 kilometers, designed to flash-burn flora and displace terrain without hitting the Caerluian city center. It had worked. The target area was empty, but the cost was visible. Trees centuries old had been reduced to smoldering husks. A bioharmonic garden once used to channel childhood empathy into planetary resonance was charred beyond recognition. Drax had played there, healing. Now it looked like every battlefield he'd ever known. Liren stepped beside him, skin dulled to a pale green, the Caerluian color for grief. You said they wouldn't destroy cities, she whispered. They didn't, he replied. They're testing your limits. She looked up at the sky where clouds had parted from the shockwaves. Then they will find them. Miles away, Admiral Sorel observed the aftermath through long-range thermal scans. Vegetation was gone. No life signs in the burn zone. No counterattack. No retaliation. He frowned. They didn't even send a message, he muttered. Commander Thane hovered nearby, arms folded. We pushed. They didn't push back. Classic pacifist psychology. Sorel shook his head. No, this feels like the calm before something uglier. Thane hesitated. Sir, we've got incoming pings on frequency 174. Low frequency hums. Layered modulation. Looks like sonar. But, planetary scale. Sorel narrowed his eyes. Harmonic mapping. Not just mapping, Thane replied. It's feedback. Sorel turned. Sharp. Feedback. Their planet's responding. And it was. Deep within Halomire's crust. Ancient resonance cores. Geological constructs designed to channel environmental harmony. Reawakened. These were not weapons by human definition. They didn't fire missiles or launch drones. They manipulated vibration, emotion, perception. And now, they focused it outward. Scout Team Alpha moved through the eastern ridge, approaching what intelligence had labeled a structural bloom, an alien tower made of translucent crystal and living vine. The team wore adaptive helmets, EMP armor, and pulse weapons. None of it mattered. When they crossed the threshold of the bloom, the temperature didn't rise. The air didn't change, but their minds did. Private Isha collapsed first, sobbing uncontrollably. Sergeant Brecker screamed and fired blindly, convinced the walls were collapsing. Lieutenant Moran dropped to his knees, mumbling about lost children he never had. None of it was real, but it all felt real. Only one managed to activate the failsafe. The team was extracted in seconds.
The official report classified the zone as a neuroresonant anomaly. Unofficially, they called it the place where memories bleed. Drax listened as survivors were brought into Hallowmire's refugee temples. He watched Carolean healers pour harmonic light into Terran skulls, calming their neurons, restoring their minds. Liren returned to him, her voice weary. "Your people are unraveling," she said. "No," Drax said grimly. "They're learning. Then so must we." She led him to the Nexus. It was hidden beneath a lake, an ancient chamber shaped like a spiral galaxy, carved by hand over millennia. In the center floated a sphere of liquid resonance, a construct of memory, sound and intent. It was Carolean history. She gestured. "Touch it." Drax hesitated. Then he placed his hand on the surface. He saw everything. The last war, 12,000 years ago. The screams, the detonations, the tearing of minds. He saw what happened when Caroleans fought not to dominate, but to defend. They shattered half their own planet. They buried the tools. They rewrote their biology. They chose never to fight again. Until now. Until Earth made war a necessity. When he pulled his hand back, his skin shook with sympathetic tremors. "God help us," he whispered. Liren met his eyes. "No gods. Just choice." Commander Thane stared at the report on his screen. "Sir, the planetary systems are reorganizing. Terrain is shifting, literally moving to obscure our satellite mapping. Cities are displacing themselves through vibrational levitation." Sorel leaned over. "Camouflage, or defense?" Sorel didn't speak for a moment. Then, "It's time." He keyed in a command. A massive projection unfolded. A model of Earth's Fleet Doctrine Alpha, Operation Scorched Shore. It was not designed for conquest. It was designed for psychological collapse. Meanwhile, Liren summoned the Carolean councils. No weapons were forged. No soldiers drafted. Instead they gathered the singers, the deep chumers, the memory weavers, the pain bearers, those with the rare gift of transmuting emotional trauma into harmonic resonance. She spoke before them. "The humans do not understand peace. They only recognize its opposite. So we will show them what pain sounds like. We will sing their own ghosts back to them."
022. The next Terran incursion didn't come by stealth, it came with thunder. Dozens of insertion pods, shaped like black teeth, crashed into Hallowmire's surface. Within seconds, Earth Marines fanned out, forming hard light perimeters. Then they heard it. A low hum. It rose, not in volume, but in presence, one by one. Their sensors failed. Not mechanically, emotionally. HUDs displayed dying children, none of whom existed. Helmets echoed with forgotten arguments, lost lovers, dead comrades. Each Marine saw a mirror, and inside it, regret. Some ran, others shot themselves to make it stop. Earth Command was forced to deploy failsafe pulses, mind-cleansing bursts that risked neurological damage. 57 troops were rendered catatonic. On the Aurelius, Sorel punched the wall. "We underestimated them." Thane nodded slowly. "They adapted." Sorel paced. "Prepare the fleet. No more containment. No more recovery. Initiate Phase 4, atmospheric conditioning." Thane turned pale. "That'll sterilize half the biosphere." Sorel looked out at Hallowmire. "They made this about minds. Let's make it about reality." Back on the planet, Drax and Liren stood atop a crystalline ridge. In the distance, Terran orbit strikers descended, giant rods wrapped in kinetic coils. They weren't bombs, they were terraformers, and if they struck, Hallowmire would never sing again. Drax's voice was low. "If you've got anything left, now's the time." Liren stared at the sky. Then she raised her arms. The air pulsed. All across the planet, Caroleans began to hum, not softly, but in unified harmony. It was not a song of fear. It was not a cry for peace. It was a scream of survival. A resonance so pure, so focused, that it bent the incoming rods off course. 3 detonated in the ocean. 2 vaporized in midair. 1 slammed into an uninhabited cliffside. Damage minimal. Message received. Sorel stared at the live feed. Thane whispered. "They stopped kinetic rods. With sound." Sorel gritted his teeth. "This isn't a rescue anymore. It's a war." Down on Hallowmire, Drax sat in silence beside Liren. He had seen war reshape men, but this had reshaped a planet. "You've become something new," he said. She nodded. "You gave us the mirror. We gave ourselves the face." He looked skyward, toward the fleet he once called home. "You understand what they'll do next, right?" "Yes," she said, "and we are no longer afraid." Tactical soul. War makes monsters of everyone, but sometimes, it also reveals the soul. Drax knew this better than anyone. It was etched into his bones like the scar under his ribcage, earned during a hostage op in the Martian Red Hold. Back then, he had ordered a strike that took down an enemy weapons lab, and 200 innocent civilians caught in the data fog. That was his gift, his curse. He saw the war the way no one else did, not as good versus evil, but as momentum, strategy, and damage control. And now he was watching the Caroleans, once pacifists, play his game, better than he ever had. Across Hallowmire, Earth's forces were losing ground, not because of superior firepower, but because the Caroleans had learned. In the low jungles of Arathine Valley, a Terran fire team entered with electromagnetic shielding, null echo pods, and resonance-hardened armor. They were gone in 4 minutes. The jungle bent around them. Vines redirected sound. Crystalline trees emitted subharmonics that jammed their ability to think coherently. By the time they reached the village, they were disoriented, emotionally unstable, and hallucinating past sins. They fired at illusions, at each other. Only one survivor was recovered, repeating, "The forest knew my name." On board the Aurelius, Admiral Sorel reviewed the data with clenched fists. Explained to me how a culture with no military is executing counterinsurgency better than our elite corps. Commander Thane's face was grim. Because we taught them how. Every time we hit them, they learned. They shouldn't be able to mimic strategy that fast. They're not mimicking, sir. They're translating. Into what? Emotion, resonance, tactics born of empathy. Sorel turned away from the holoscreens. This is no longer a retrieval op. It's a containment war. And if we don't shut them down now, they're going to evolve into something we can't stop later. Drax was back in the Temple of Shards, a place where Kerluians once mourned the lost frequencies of the dead. Now, it was something more. Strategists sat in spirals, tuning psychic chords through glowing stone prisms. Combat singers. Yes, they had a word for them now. Trained in pairs, crafting sonic bursts strong enough to disable hardware, or scramble a human soldier's equilibrium. Liren approached with soft steps. You look like a man watching ghosts. I am, Drax said, except they're alive, and they've learned how to shoot. She tilted her head. You fear us now? He laughed dryly. No, I fear what we'll make of each other. He handed her a datapad. What is this? She asked. Tactical doctrine. My own. From back when I led covert strikes in the Orion corridor. She stared at it. Why give us this? Because Earth thinks I'm a hostage. When they realize I'm helping you, they'll level this world. I'd rather you be ready. Back on the Aurelius, Earth's top tactical AI, Osiris 5, produced a battlefield projection. This planet now represents a Class Zeta threat to Terran supremacy. Localized engagements result in systemic morale and neurological degradation among troops. Recommendations? Sorel asked. Full-scale orbital strike. Burn the harmonic nodes. Destroy the resonance lattice. Flatten the cultural infrastructure. Thane spoke up. That's genocide, sir. Osiris 5 responded. Flat and cold. Genocide is a geopolitical term. This is containment. Sorel stared. He had choices to make. Night fell on Halimire. It was not quiet. In the canyons of Selnar's edge, Carolean songships took flight, levitating through harmonics, not combustion. Their tones fused with atmosphere, rendering them invisible to radar. From above, they rained down resonance bursts that didn't destroy but disarmed. Human troops collapsed in place, unable to move, not paralyzed by tech, but by their own grief amplified tenfold. In a mountain cavern, Drax sat with a Carolean named Soraya, a young empath who had recently discovered she could tune the frequency of human thoughts. I didn't know I could do it, she whispered. But when I heard the soldier's pain, it pulled at me. What did you hear? Drax asked. His mother's voice, saying goodbye, over and over. He was too afraid to answer. Drax looked down. He's not alone. Most of us carry echoes like that. She touched his shoulder gently. And you? He didn't answer, but she felt it. A memory of a battlefield, a burning orphanage, and a choice made in the dark. Soraya's eyes welled up. I'm sorry. Drax nodded. So am I. Admiral Sorel stared at the surface of Halimire, rage and confusion boiling beneath his exterior. He had commanded campaigns against pirates, insurgents, and even rebel Terran factions. But this was different. Every countermeasure failed. Every advance unraveled. His fleet was the most powerful in the quadrant, and it was being emotionally defeated. Begin final prep, he growled. We're deploying the Lazarus Protocol. Thane stiffened. Sir, that's banned under 10 interstellar conventions. It's not banned when the enemy isn't human. Drax intercepted the plan. He hacked a down comsat, filtered through Earth's military command nodes, and found it. Lazarus Protocol. Neurochemical cascade bombs, weapons that would trigger a resonance flood, overloading all harmonic channels, driving empathic species insane. Not lethal, but worse. It would turn every Carolean into a screaming shell. They would never sing again. He showed the data to Liren. She did not speak for a long time. Then she said, So, this is the edge of your soul. No, Drax replied. This is where I turn back. He broke into a Terran forward base that night, alone. Disabled 2 guards, used their own tranquilizers, uploaded a virus into the mainframe, not to destroy, but to signal, to Earth, to Sorel, to everyone listening. This is Captain Arlen Drax, Special Tactics Division, Service Number 175, X. I am alive. I am not a hostage. And if you proceed with Lazarus, you will cross a line no enemy has ever dared. He paused. I defected. Another paused. They helped me. They saved me. Now I help them. He stared into the recorder. If you come for this world again, I won't be your ghost, I'll be your reckoning. The message rippled through the Aurelius, and across Earth's network. Admiral Sorel watched it 3 times, then turned to Thane. Well, Thane said nothing, just turned away. Back on Halimire, Liren stood on a high ridge, watching as new clouds formed above the surviving forests. Each one carried traces of human carbon, and Carolean light. The air was different now. So were they, and so was he. Drax approached, bandaged and limping. We still might lose, he said. She nodded. But now we know who we are. And far above them, unseen for now, Earth's fleets began to pull back, but not all, because peace had a price, and sometimes, it started with a tactical soul. The broken line. Every war has a moment, quiet final, where lines break, not from bombs or bullets, but from within. Sometimes, it's a soldier who puts down their weapon. Sometimes, it's a commander who stops believing in victory. And sometimes, it's a whole world, choosing not to be what it was yesterday. For Earth and Halimire, that moment had arrived.
but the line that would break wasn't drawn in the soil or sky. It was drawn in the mind of one man, and the soul of an entire species. Admiral Sorel stared out the Aurelius's viewport, a glass arc spanning half the war deck. Beyond it, Hollomire shimmered. It should have been easy. One unarmed planet, one missing operative, one misread signal. Instead, 4,000 casualties, 6 squadrons lost. A rising political backlash back on Earth, and now a traitor. Drax, sir, Thane said behind him, hesitant. The Lazarus payloads are locked, awaiting confirmation. Sorel didn't turn. Any new comms? None from Drax. But there's chatter. Civilian net leaks. That broadcast went viral. Across 5 sectors. Let them chatter. Sorel growled. This is protocol. He made it war. He raised his hand. Thane didn't move. I need confirmation, Commander. Still nothing. Sorel turned. Slowly. Thane's hands were at his sides. I can't, sir. You question me now. Thane met his eyes. I served under you during the Rigel uprising. Watched you sign the order to glass 10,000 civilians, because one warlord might have been in the crowd. And I followed you then. His voice trembled, but held. But I won't follow you into this. Sorel's hand hovered over the console. I don't need your permission. No, Thane said. But maybe you need to ask yourself, is this still a mission, or just revenge? Sorel's hand didn't move. For the first time he looked uncertain. On Hollomire, Drax stood at the edge of the cradle, a canyon where resonance rivers converged. With him were Liren, Soraya, and 2 Caroluian elders. The wind carried the scent of scorched earth, and blooming crystalline moss, rebirth and ruin, woven together. They haven't struck, Liren said. Not yet. They will, Drax muttered. He's a soldier like me, doesn't know when to stop. She studied him. And you? He didn't answer. Instead he pulled out a small palm-sized chip, Earth Tech, data core encrypted with Terran Black Ops protocols. What is it? Soraya asked. My confession. He activated it, and his memories unspooled. Flashback. Operation Red Dagger. Drax led a covert mission deep into the shadow territories of Zorak Prime, a world under rebellion. His team had intel on a rogue scientist developing resonance warfare, a weaponized empathy emitter. The mission was to kill the program and disappear. They found the lab in the core of a school. Children, teachers, no guards. The weapon had been destroyed weeks earlier. Command had wrong data, but orders were clear. Drax gave the signal. Orbital strike, no survivors. He watched the sky light up, watched everything burn, and said nothing. Later they erased the mission, buried the files, declared him dead, because sometimes it was cleaner to lose a ghost than admit to ghosts made by your own hands. Back in the present, the chip flickered out. Liren's skin turned pale silver, a hue Drax hadn't seen before. You carry that inside? He nodded. Earth's already lost me. I'm just showing them what they made. The wind shifted. Suddenly the ground vibrated. Not Carulian resonance. Something else. A rift opened in the sky. 6 Earth drop pods screamed downward, trailed by comet fire. They weren't soldiers. They were collectors. Collectors weren't public. They weren't on any roster. They were the Terran Alliance's cleanup crew. When Black Ops went rogue, when agents defected, when planets became inconvenient, the collectors erased. They landed like thunder. Armored giants in matte black exosuits, each over 7 feet tall. No insignia. One word marked their backs. Null. Drax's face paled. We have to go. Liren stepped forward. We stand. No, he snapped. These aren't soldiers. These are shadows. They'll destroy you before you can breathe. A voice boomed from the lead collector, heavily modulated, filtered. Drax, surrender. No broadcast. No plea. No tricks. Or Halamar dies. Soraya stood beside Drax. You're not alone. No, he said. But I need to end this my way. He stepped forward, hands raised. I surrender, he said. Transmit your implant code, the collector ordered. Drax hesitated, and then, he smiled. I deactivated it, 10 minutes ago. Right before I broadcasted your mission parameters to 6 systems. The collector paused. You're bluffing. You want to test it? Drax asked. Or maybe check with command first, if they want their deep-buried war crimes lit up across the diplomatic feeds? A long silence. Then the collector raised his arm. Drax tensed, but instead of firing, he spoke. Order recalled. The others didn't move. Return to base. Protocol null 15. Erasure denied. And they turned, vanished into the atmosphere. From orbit, Sorel watched the signal cut out. Thane stood beside him. You lost. Sorel shook his head. No, Earth lost. They don't know it yet. He keyed in a code. Private. Final. A message to Terran High Command. Drax confirmed. Asset compromised. Caroline threat non-kinetic. Recommend diplomatic fallback. War inadvisable. He looked out once more. To think, we were the saviors once. Back on Halamire, the people gathered. There were no flags. No victory salutes. Only breath. Stillness. And the long rising cord of relief. Drax stood beside Liren, watching the dawn rise, this time without ships. You broke them, she said. No, he replied. I just made them see themselves. And us. He looked at her. You made yourselves. Later, Sorel approached with a curious glint in her eyes. What happens now? Drax considered it. We rebuild. We warn others. We prepare. For another war. For another signal. He held up the old beacon chip. Cracked. Sparking. This is where it started. Sorella nodded. And it ended with a choice. He smiled faintly. No, it ended with an answer. The answered flame. The war didn't end with explosions. It ended with silence. Not the silence of defeat or death, but the breath held in awe, as two civilizations stood on opposite edges of a knife and chose not to press forward. A signal had been sent, a man had been saved, and the response had shaken the galaxy. But this was not the end of the story. It was the beginning of an answer that would echo far beyond Halamore, and far beyond Earth. 6 days after the collectors withdrew, Earth's fleet stood idle in the upper orbit of Halamore. The skies once alive with ships' fire and fury, now hummed with stillness. Admiral Sorel remained in his command chamber, surrounded by holograms of diplomatic channels now lighting up like wildfire. Senators, commanders, journalists, civilian diplomats, all demanding, what happened down there? Who is Arlen Drax? Why didn't we win? But the only answer Sorel had was a single file. Drax's broadcast. It had gone viral not because it was loud, but because it was human, painful, raw. True, it was everything Earth had denied for years, shoved into the mouth of a man who'd once been their weapon. Now he was their mirror. On Halamire, Drax walked through the regrowth fields. The scars of war still pocked the land. Charred stone, fallen harmonics towers, the faint scent of ash in the soil. But flowers had returned. Crystals had begun humming again. And the Caroluians, those who had known only peace, had changed. Not into soldiers, but into something more.
At the Temple of New Harmony, Liren stood before a gathering of younglings, Caroluians born during the conflict. Those who had seen humanity not as an enemy, but as a puzzle. Our song is not the same, she told them. It now carries deeper notes, sadness, rage, courage, love. She gestured to Drax, seated quietly at the back, and it carries the echo of one who reminded us that peace without strength is a song unheard. Drax looked down at his scarred hands. No medals, no rank, no home waiting for him. Just a planet that had given him back his soul. Far above, Earth's high command convened. Internal debates raged. Do they strike again? Do they risk diplomatic fallout? Or do they listen? The decision came from Earth's Assembly Chancellor. Breaking protocol. We do not escalate. We declassify all logs. We offer dialogue. Earth cannot afford another war driven by fear. And for the first time in decades, the Terran Alliance sent emissaries to a world it had once tried to burn. The meeting took place in the glass amphitheater of Selen Prime, a city rebuilt from ash and resonance. Drax watched from above as humans and Caroluians sat across from one another. No weapons, no demands, just words and music. Caroluian diplomats sang a memory, a shared dream of their first encounter with humanity. The silence of space, the broken body in a pod, the decision to help. And humanity responded not with apology, but a question. What do we become from this? Soraya, now a rising voice among the Caroluian youth, spoke in clear tones. You saw war in us. We showed you something else. You brought fleets. We answered with song. A pause. And now we wish to share our gift, not just with you, but with others. In the months that followed, Halamir became a waypoint, a place where damaged Terran minds came to heal. Traumatized soldiers, broken strategists, disillusioned agents. They came for silence, for the resonance, and some stayed. Drax became their guide, not a savior, not a hero, just a man who had once burned, and now carried a flame that warmed instead of destroyed. One night, he stood atop the ridge above Selnar's edge, watching a shuttle rise into orbit, Earth's ambassador heading home. Liren stood beside him, her glow soft and pulsing with contentment. You still think this ends? She asked. No, Drax replied. The galaxy's too big for that. And when the next flame comes, he turned to her, then maybe they'll remember that we didn't answer it with fire, but with all of us. Far away in the edges of charted space, another signal blinked. An emergency beacon, unclaimed, unanswered, but it pulsed with Terran code. And when it reached Halamire, the council didn't hesitate. Liren stood before the chamber. Once we saved one human, she said, and humanity answered with a fleet. A pause. Now she smiled. Let us see what happens when we save 10.